Alright, today we're going to talk about how to write the equation of a line given 2 points. Now, whenever we're writing an equation and the question asks us, write the equation, the first thing that we should do, just to remind ourselves, is let's write out what is the equation of a line look like in slope-intercept form, and that looks like y equals mx plus b. And then we should ask ourselves, okay, what two things do I need in order to write an equation in this form? Well, number one, we need the slope, or m, and number two, we need our y-intercept, or b. I always like to put this on the side because this is going to remind me the two things that I need as I go through the question and try to figure out what I'm given and what I still need to solve for. So it says, write the equation of a line containing the points 3, -1, and -2, -6. And I notice that in this example, I'm given neither m nor b. I'm not given anything. But I have a couple of things that I can do in order to find m and to find b. I know that m is something I'm going to have to solve for. And I know that b is something I'm going to have to solve for. So first I'm going to solve for m. And I know that I can find the slope by using my slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to do that first. I'm going to go ahead and label my points, and we're going to go through this kind of quickly because we've gone over this objective before. We have x1, y1, and we have x2, y2. And then I'm going to go ahead and write out my equation without putting any numbers in because I want to make sure that I don't make the common mistake of just putting minus. I want to put minus a negative if it happens to be negative. So my y2 value was a -6. My y1 value was a -1. My x2 value was a -2. And my x1 value was a +3. Alright, so then I'm going to go ahead and solve this. -6 minus -1, that gives me a -5. -2 minus 3, that also gives me a -5. And I know that I need to simplify this because I don't want to leave it as a -5 divided by or over -5. So when I simplify that, I get that m is 1. The reason it's so important to write this over here is now I can write, oh, m is 1. I know that m is 1, and I'm going to write that here because as soon as I find out what b is, I can put my equation together. Now I also know that I need to find b, and we've talked previously about once we have the slope, we can use the slope and a point to find b. It does not matter which point we use to find b as long as we pull the x and the y value from one point. We wouldn't want to pull the x from here and the y from here. We need to pick one point. So I don't like to deal with negatives a lot, and this one only has one negative, and I'm going to use this point. I'm going to call it my preferred point. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite my equation to solve for b, y equals mx plus b. This is just writing what the equation should look like. Alright, and then I'm going to substitute my values. The y value in my point was -1. The value of m that I just found was 1, so I'm going to put a 1 here. The value of x in this point is a +3. And I don't know b, that's what I'm solving for, so I'm going to put plus b. And I'm going to go ahead and draw my line down the equal side and simplify. This side is simplified, I just have a -1, so I'm going to bring down -1. I notice right here that I have multiplication. 1 times 3 is a +3. And I haven't done anything to my plus b, so I'm going to bring it down. Now this has turned into a one-step equation. I'm going to ask myself, what's happening to b so that I can get b alone? Well, 3 is being added to b. How do I undo add 3? I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. Now I'm going to simplify. -1 minus 3 is -4. 3 minus 3 is 0. That cancels. and I'm going to bring down my b. Now I have that b is -4. Now when I look over here, I have m, I have b, I can write an equation. So I'm going to write y equals m, which was 1, x plus b. Now my b was a -4, and we know that we don't want to put plus a negative, so I'm just going to write -4. This is my equation. Now to make this even more simpler, we can drop this 1, so really the more correct way of writing this would be y equals x minus 4. And this is the equation of my line that goes through these 2 points. Now we should always take time and check our answer whenever we found this. So I'm going to go ahead and erase all of this. So if you need to pause and make sure you get all your work done, I will do that now. Alright, so I erased my work, and I'm going to check this equation before I move on, because I want to make sure it's right. So I came up with the equation y equals x minus 4. I used this point to find b. So just like when we had a point and one point and a slope, we can check our equation using the other point. We should always use the other point that we didn't use before, because that's going to ensure that we're right. So in this point, the y value is -6. The x value was -2. I'm going to bring down my -4. And then I'm just going to make sure that this ends up being -6 on both sides. So I'm going to bring down my -6. -2 minus 4, well, that is -6. And because I got the same number on both sides, because this is a true statement, that means that my equation is correct and this check worked. So my answer is y equals x minus 4. Alright, so let's go ahead and do another example. It says write the equation of a line containing points 1, 2, and 2, -4. So just like before, the first thing I'm going to do is just write out my equation. Y equals mx plus b. And I'm going to write out for myself the 2 things that I need. Number 1, I need the slope, or m. Number 2, I need the y-intercept, or b. I'm going to leave this here because that's going to help me as I go through and try to figure out what I need to find. I'm given 2 points. I'm not given m or b, so I know that I'm going to have to solve for both. So I'm going to make a space for myself to solve for both. Okay, solving for m, I'm going to have to use my equation again. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I'm going to go ahead and label my points. x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going to draw out what the formula looks like without putting numbers in so that I can make sure that I follow the proper steps. My y2 value was -4. My y1 value was a +2. My x2 value was a +2. My y1 value was a +1. I'm going to solve. -4 minus 2 is a -6. 2 minus 1 is +1. I know I don't want to keep my slope as a fraction, so I'm going to simplify. -6 over 1 gives me a slope of -6. I'm going to go ahead and write that here. M is -6 so that I know I have it. Now I still need to find b, so I'm going to pick one of my points. I'm going to pick this point because it has 2 positive numbers, and it's just a little bit easier if I use positive numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and write my equation. Y equals mx plus b. I know that the y value in my point is 2. I just found that m was a -6. My x value in my point was a +1. And I'm going to bring down my plus b because I haven't found it yet. I'm going to go ahead and simplify. This 2 can be brought down. Negative 6 times 1 is negative 6. I'm going to bring down my plus b. And ask myself, how do I undo plus negative 6? I add 6 to both sides. Remember, you're always looking at the sign in front of the number. 2 plus 6 is 8. Negative 6 plus 6 is 0. That cancels out. And it all equals b. I'm going to go over here and write that b equals 8. And I'm going to finally write my equation, since that's what the question is asking. So my equation is y equals negative 6x plus b, which was 8, so plus 8. Now remember, it's always a good idea at this point to check your work. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this. I'm going to write out my equation. Y equals negative 6x plus 8. And when I check it, I'm going to use the point that I did not use to find b. So my y value in my second point was negative 4. That equals negative 6. I'm going to write out what my x value in my second point was, which was 2 plus 8. And now I'm going to simplify. Bring down my negative 4. Negative 6 times 2 is a negative 12. I'm going to bring down my plus 8. Negative 12 plus 8 is negative 4. My check works, so this equation is correct, and my equation is y equals negative 6x plus 8. Alright, let's do another example, and in this example I'm going to show you a smart cut that we can use that's very, very helpful. So first of all, it says write the equation of a line containing the points negative 3, 1, and 0, 4. So first of all, I'm just going to write out my equation that I need, y equals mx plus b. And I'm going to remind myself the two things that I need. Number 1, m, and number 2, b. I am given neither m nor b, so I'm going to have to solve for m and solve for b. I'm going to draw both parts. Again, I'm going to use my equation. So I'm going to label my points. x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going to set up my formula without putting any numbers in. y2 was negative 4. y1 is positive 1. x2 is 0. x1 is negative 3. Negative 1 minus 1 gives me a negative 5. 0 minus negative 3 gives me a positive 3. And I'm going to check on my calculator if that simplifies or reduces, and I'm going to see that it doesn't. So I'm going to write my slope as a negative 5 over 3. And I'm also going to write that here so that I have it down in both spots and I can see what happens as I go. Now, what's really great is that we have a smart cut we can use on this example to find b. I'm going to rewrite b over here so it's a little bit more room. So we're given this point 0, negative 4. We've talked previously that at the y-intercept, which is what b is, so at the y-intercept, if you're looking at a graph, and this is x and this is y, the y-intercept is the point where your line crosses the y-axis. If I were to graph this point 0, negative 4, I would go 0 to the left or right, and I would go down to a negative 4. It would be right here. When your point has an x value of 0 like this, that means that this number is b. This is b. So a smart cut we can use is when we see a point that has an x value of 0, we know that the y value is b. So in this example, we don't have to solve for b. We just know because of this point that b is negative 4. Now, a common mistake people make is they might see a point like 2, 0. This does not tell us that 2 is b. Because if I were to graph this point, it is not a y-intercept. I would go 2 to the right and up or down nothing, and it would be right here. This is actually an x-intercept. We cannot use this for our smart cut. We are looking for a point like that one where the x value is 0 and the y value will tell us b. So if this was our point, we could say that our y value, or our y-intercept was 3. In this example, we have the point 0, negative 4. So we know that our b is negative 4. So I'm going to write that here. Go ahead and write my equation. Y equals negative 5 over 3x. Remember, we don't want to put plus negative 4, so I'm going to write minus 4. And that is my equation. Just like before, we should always check our work. Alright, we're going to do 3 more examples so that you can see all different kinds that you might see. It says, write the equation of the line that passes through the origin and 3, 2. So, again, let's write out what we know. We know that our equation is going to look like y equals mx plus b. And we know that we're going to need 2 things. Number 1, the slope, and number 2, the y-intercept. I am given neither. And I'm also given something tricky because it says the origin. Now, we've been doing examples where you have 2 points. This is just saying the origin. So I'm going to think, what is the point that the origin is at? Oh, the origin is right here where the 2 axes intersect. And that point is 0, 0. So I actually do have 2 points that I can use. It's just that one of them was written out, and I need to think about what is the origin. Oh, that point is 0, 0. So again, I know I'm going to have to solve for m. And I know I'm going to have to solve for b. So to find m, I'm going to use my equation to find slopes. I'm going to label my points, x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going to go ahead and draw out what my formula is going to look like without putting the number in. My y2 was a positive 2. My y1 was 0. My x2 was positive 3. My x1 is 0. I'm going to go ahead and simplify. 2 minus 0 is 2. 3 minus 0 is 3. So I'm going to check, and 2 over 3 does not reduce. So I'm going to leave my slope as positive 2 over 3. I'm going to write that over here, 2 over 3. Alright, now I'm going to solve for b. Now, we could use one of our points. But, again, I see a smart cut we can use because we talked about whenever x is 0, the y value is b. So in this example, I have an x of 0, so that means that this is b. And if we think about it, that kind of makes sense because our line has to go through the origin, meaning our line has to go through. Let me draw a better line. Our line needs to go through right here, 0, 0. And if our line crosses or goes through 0, 0, then the y-intercept where it crosses the y has to be 0. So I'm going to use my smart cut, and I know that b is 0. I'm going to write my equation. Y equals 2/3 x plus 0. Now, we've talked about this previously. Whenever we add 0 to something, it doesn't change the value. So we don't need to write that 0. Y equals 2 over 3x. That is your equation. Now, just like any good mathematician, we should check our answer. So I'm going to go ahead and erase the work. And remember, we want to use this point to identify b. We're going to use this point to check. So I'm going to write my equation. Y equals 2/3 x. My y value was 2. I have 2/3 as my slope. My x value was 3. I'm going to close my parentheses. I'm going to simplify. 2 on this side, I'm going to bring down. 2/3 times 3 is 2. I get 2 equals 2. That means that my check worked. So my equation is y equals 2/3 x. Alright, we're going to do another example. Again, it says write the equation of a line containing an x-intercept of -4 and a y-intercept of 6. Alright, so we want to write the equation of a line. So we're going to write out y equals mx plus b, because that's what our equation should look like. And we know we need two things. Number 1, the slope, and number 2, the y-intercept. Now, I'm not given any points. And this is, again, a time when you need to read critically and ask yourself, what do I know about an x-intercept of -4? Well, at the x-intercept, all values of y are 0. So an x-intercept, that point is going to look like -4, 0. -4 is the intercept, and the y value for all x-intercepts is 0. And a y-intercept of -6. Well, I know that at a y-intercept, all x values are 0. So that point is going to be 0, 6. Now I have 2 points that I can work with to find what my slope is and what my y-intercept is. So I'm going to write out m and b. I know I'm going to use my equation, so I'm going to write out. And you'll notice that I've stopped writing the formula, but look back in your notes if you need to use it. I have, I'm going to label my points, x1, y1, x2, y2. y2 is a positive 6. y1 is 0. y2 is 0. y1 is -4. 6 minus 0 is 6. 0 minus -4 is a positive 4. And say, okay, can I reduce 6 over 4? Yes, 6 over 4 can be reduced because 6 and 4 both have a factor of 2. And if I divide the top and the bottom by 2, I get 3 over 2. So I know that my slope is going to be 3 over 2. Now, again, I can use a smart cut because I have the y-intercept of 6. When my x is 0, this is b. So I know that b is 6. So I'm going to go ahead and write my equation. Y equals 3 over 2x plus 6. Now, just like any good mathematician, we need to check our answers. So I'm going to go ahead and pause. So I have my equation. Y equals 3 over 2x plus 6. I used this point to find b, so I'm going to use this point to check. Y is 0. I'm going to bring down my slope of 3 over 2. Put parentheses to remind myself to multiply. My x value was -4. Bring down my plus 6. This side is simplified, so I'm going to bring down my 0. 3 over 2 times -4 is -6. I'm going to bring down my plus 6. And -6 plus 6 is 0. My check worked. So my equation is y equals 3 over 2x plus 6. Alright, we're going to do one more example. It says write the equation of a line from the input-output table below. So some of us might get tripped up by seeing a table, but remember that a table is just taking points and putting it into, organizing it so that all the x's are together and all the y's are together. So we know we want to write an equation, so let's write out our equation. It's going to look like y equals mx plus b. We also know that we need to find m in order to write our equation, and we also need to find b, so I'm going to write those out. How do I use this to find points? If it's helpful, you can just go ahead and, it's almost like you have points here. They're just in a table. Our first point is -4, 6. Our second point is 0, 1. If it's helpful, I'm going to write those out up here just to pull them out of the table. I'm going to write negative 4, comma 6, because that's my x and my y. And my second point is 0, comma 1. That's my x and my y. My x and my y. Now I know I need to find slope, and I know I need to find the y-intercept, so I'm going to write out two different parts. I'm going to use my equation to find slope, so x1, y1, x2, y2. I'm going to draw out for myself what the formula will look like without numbers so that I make sure that I don't make any mistakes. My y2 value is 1. My y1 value is 6. My x2 value is 0. My x1 value is negative 4. 1 minus 6 gives me a negative 5. 0 minus negative 4 gives me a positive 4. I'm going to check if that simplifies, and it doesn't, so my slope is negative 5 over positive 4. Remember that even though there's a positive 4 down here and there's a negative up here, this whole term is just negative 5 over 4. So negative 5 over 4. Now, we have a smart cut again. We could see that in this point in the table, or the point that I wrote up here, which is the same, that we have an x value of 0, so that b is 1. I just want to show you really quickly on this last example why that works and why it is the same. Let's write out our equation. Y equals mx plus b. And let's just prove it that it works. Okay, y. The value of y in this point is 1. Our m we found was negative 5 over 4. Our x is 0 plus b. So I'm going to bring down my 1. Negative 5 over 4 times 0 is 0, just 0, plus b. Now, you can either think, okay, how do I get rid of this plus 0? Well, I could subtract 0 from both sides, but 0 plus b doesn't make a difference. Adding 0 to something doesn't change it. So this 0 we don't need. We can get rid of it. It's just b equals 1, which is what we have here. And that's why it works. We know that this is b. So I'm going to write out my equation. Y equals negative 5 over 4 x plus 1. Just like any good mathematician, we should check our answer. So go ahead and copy down these practice problems if you not do so, and then pause the video before you see the answers. Here are the answers to the 4 practice problems. Check your work. If you got something wrong, go back and see if you can find your mistake. But if you have been checking your solutions, you should have found your mistake before you got to the answer page.